Our Unity4Charity grade 12 presentation is going to be about climate refugees and is presented by Tony, Logan, Joseph, Julie, and Brian. Table of contents. What are climate refugees? Global climate displacement, case study, problems and responses, UNHCR strategic plan, and U4C contributions. What are climate refugees? Climate refugees are people who have lost their homes, communities, and livelihoods due to long-term or sudden environmental changes. They face a wide range of social, economic, and emotional challenges as they struggle with the loss of shelter and income. However, their vulnerability does not only come from their economic situation. It also stems from the lack of legal protection available to them, which will be discussed further in the second half of the presentation. These climate hazards have a much greater impact than we may imagine. Many are forced into poverty, separated from their families and communities, or relocated to areas with poor living conditions. It may have been a home that took years to build or pay off, yet in an instant, it all disappears. This is the harsh reality for many climate refugees. So what are the causes? The environmental changes leading to climate displacement are largely caused by human activity. One major factor is emission of greenhouse gases. In our society, large amounts of fossil fuels such as coal and oil are burnt, releasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. These gases trap heat, causing the Earth's temperature to rise, a process that drives rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and droughts. These changes are what leads to floods, hurricanes, heat waves, and storms that displace millions of people. Another key factor is deforestation, the clearing of forests from large areas of land. This reduces the planet's ability to absorb carbon dioxide, increasing the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Lastly, water mismanagement, including overuse of water for irrigation, draining wetlands, and soil degradation. This worsens droughts and floods, further threatening vulnerable communities.
The climate crisis is a human crisis. Over 120 million people have been forcibly displaced in the past decade due to conflict and climate hazards. Climate change worsens existing crises, hitting vulnerable groups the hardest, refugees and displaced communities. Lacking housing, money, and support, they struggle to survive and recover from floods, droughts, and heat waves. Global impact of climate change of displacement. Conflict and violence remain main causes, but climate change is now a major accelerating factor. Around 90 million forcibly displaced people live in countries with high to extreme exposure to climate hazards. Nearly half of all displaced people are affected by both conflict and climate impacts. Climate-related hazards are expected to intensify, increasing future displacement. By 2040, the number of countries facing extreme climate hazards is projected to rise from 3 to 65, and most of them will host displaced population. Case study. In October 2024, floodwater from nearby river rose around the Gulmeri refugee site in Chad. The camp houses refugees from northern Cameroon who fled violence triggered by climate-driven scarcity of land and water. Forcibly displaced people are increasingly trapped. Their homelands become uninhabitable, and even destination sites face climate threats. In 2023, 45 countries reported displacement linked to conflicts, and 42 of them also reported disaster-related displacement. This shows that conflicts and climate impacts now overlap, leaving fewer safe places to go.
So this slide talks about the main problems and responses related to climate migration. Starting with the main problems. First, there's a legal gap. Right now, there's no official climate refugee status under international law. The 1951 Refugee Convention only protects people fleeing persecution, like war or violence, not people escaping floods, droughts, or rising sea levels. Because of that, people displaced by climate change fall into a gray area. Some countries give them temporary protection or visas, but others don't recognize them at all. This makes the system confusing and inconsistent. One person might be accepted in one country, but rejected in another. It's a very nuanced and vague area, and that's why it's hard to build a clear rule for climate migrants. Next, there are human rights risks. People often lose housing, IDs, and access to healthcare or education. Vulnerable groups such as children, the elderly, and people with disabilities are hit the hardest. There are also international tensions. Since countries have different policies and argue over who should take responsibility or pay for relocation, some even restrict their borders. Finally, economic strain happens when large numbers of people move into one area and housing fills up. Prices go up and affects local residents, which often leads to public dissatisfaction and unrest, while migrants also often can't find jobs that match their skills. At the international level, groups like UNHCR work to protect people when climate change overlaps with persecution or conflict. IOM collects data and helps countries manage migration safely, and IPPC provides the science behind climate risks and how they drive migration. There are also global frameworks like the Global Impact of Migration and the Sendai Framework, which guide countries on managing migration and reducing disaster risk. At the national level, governments use tools like temporary protection, relocation programs, and humanitarian visas, and they also support people through cash insurance and relocation assistance. At the local and NGO level, cities work to expand housing and jobs, while NGOs, non-governmental organizations, provide frontline help like shelter, legal aid, and advocacy for fair treatment. And the key principle behind all of this is cooperation. Countries need to share funding, data, and early warning systems to reduce tension and protect both migrants and host communities.
UNHCR's strategic plan for climate action from 2024 to 2030 focuses on protecting and empowering people affected by the climate crisis. By 2030, the goal is for more forcibly displaced and stateless people to find protection and durable solutions, become resilient to climate impact, and live safe and sufficient lives. To achieve this vision, UNHCR supports host government, works with humanitarian and development partners, and engages the private sector. For the next slide, protection for those fleeing climate-fueled crisis. For protection, UNHCR aims to strengthen international safeguards for people displaced by climate change and disasters. We built government and partner capacity to manage asylum related to climate impact and support national laws and policies that protect those displaced within their environment. Green solutions for refugees and hosts. For green solutions, the Green Agency promotes the sustainable use of natural resources, expand access to renewable energy, and provide climate-smart water and sanitation services. It also works with local communities to restore and protect their environment. Building climate resilience. To build climate resilience, UNHCR provides climate shelters and cash assistance. Strengthen social protection systems and support livelihood adapted to climate risk, and expand early warning and preparedness measures. UNHCR's on climate action. Finally, through its climate action, UNHCR is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, shifting to renewable energy across its operations, and making its global supply chain more sustainable.
Climate change is now one of the biggest reasons why people are forced to leave their homes, not only because of wars or conflicts, but because of floods, droughts, and rising seas are destroying where they live. When we say climate refugees, we mean real people, families who lose their homes, children who cannot go to school, and communities that lose hope. That's why we must protect human rights and dignity. Everyone deserves safety, fairness, and a chance to rebuild their life. But no single country can do it alone. We need robust teamwork between governments, NGOs, development groups, and even businesses. Only by working together can we face this global crisis. So our next slide is going to be about U4C contributions. Unity4Charity, or U4C, helps climate refugees in many ways. First, U4C donates to UNHCR, which gives families food, clean water, shelter, and medical care after climate disasters. Second, U4C focuses on education. Many children lose their schools when their homes are destroyed, so U4C helps them keep learning, even in refugee camps. U4C also helps overlooked communities, people who often don't get enough support. It develops young leaders like us to spread awarenesses about climate change and inspire others to act. Lastly, U4C supports indigenous education, helping indigenous people stay strong and reduce future forced migration. U4C demonstrates that helping the planet also means helping its people, and that even small actions can make a big difference when we act together. So our message is like this: protecting our planet means protecting its people. Thank you for listening to our presentation.